All right, everyone, let's go ahead and begin. We gave it a few minutes for folks to come in. It's 11:05 and it's time to begin. My name is Luke Wood, and I serve as Vice President for Student Affairs and Campus Diversity here at San Diego State University. And we're excited that so many of you have joined us today for important conversation on advancing access and success for transfer students. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we're doing at SDSU. And hopefully you will see some things that really make you proud of the work that's taking place here. I'm very proud of it. And with that, we're going to go ahead and begin. I will note a few things. We're not going to be responding to the questions in the chat window. So if you have questions, comments, please use the Q&A function that should be in the bottom hand side of your screen, or for some of you on the top side of your screen. And with that, we're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. And as we do with any event at San Diego State, we always begin with acknowledging the land that we're on and coming to you from. And so I'm going to begin by reading our land acknowledgement. We stand upon a land that carries the footsteps of millennia of Kumeyaay people. They are people whose traditional lifeways intertwine with the worldview of earth and sky in a community of living beings. This land is part of a relationship that has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced the Kumeyaay people to the present day. It is part of a worldview founded in the harmony of the cycles of the sky and balance in the forces of life. For the Kumeyaay, red and black represent the balance of those forces that provide for harmony within our bodies as well as the world around us. As students, faculty, staff, and alumni of San Diego State University, we acknowledge this legacy from the Kumeyaay. We promote this balance in life as we pursue our goals of knowledge and understanding. We find inspiration in the Kumeyaay spirit to open our minds and hearts. It is the legacy of the red and black. It is the land of the Kumeyaay. Yeh Ehon, my heart is good. So in the next slide, what I'm going to do first is just talk about some of the objectives that we have for this webinar. The first is to discuss some salient challenges facing access and success for transfer students and degree completion students. The second is to discuss equity-minded enrollment management practices as a partnership between sending and receiving institutions. And that would include our community college partners as well as us as the university. And to discuss the SDSU microsite program as a strategy for enhancing access to degree completion programs for students. But first, to provide some context for how we think about equity and how we're trying to approach this work at San Diego State University, I'm going to begin by turning it over to my colleague, Frank Harris III, who is a professor of post-secondary education at San Diego State University and a prolific scholar, public intellectual, and all around wonderful individual who has been focused on issues of access and equity throughout the entirety of his career. So I'm going to go to the next slide and turn it over to Frank. And as I do, just know that we're using a hashtag for this event. It's hashtag transfer equity. That's hashtag transfer equity. Please tag SDSU in it, and anything that you see that you like, just know that we're trying. Anything you see that we need to improve on, please let us know, because we're committed to continuous improvement around this work. And so if we go to the next slide, I'll turn it over to Dr. Frank Harris III.
Yeah, thank you so much, Luke. Good morning, everyone. To those of you who are joining us on the West Coast, and to our friends east of us, good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to contribute to this important conversation, because transfer access is such a critical issue related to equity within our post-secondary landscape. Next slide. And in talking about the transfer experience, I think it's important that I first start by acknowledging that transfer is the primary pathway to the baccalaureate degree for students who've been historically underrepresented and underserved in education. I'm going to provide a snapshot of who some of those students are in the next slide. But we also know and recognize and understand that the transfer process, despite it being as important as it is for educational equity, is often riddled with institutional barriers and challenges that make it difficult for community college students to navigate the transfer process, both before and after transferring. And to really help provide some insight into this process, really want to use the concept of a transfer receptive culture. It's very important that receiving institutions are able to establish a transfer receptive culture. And this concept comes from our colleague, Dr. Dimple Jain, who talks about a transfer receptive culture as essentially an institution's commitment, previous slide, please, commitment to providing the support that is needed for students to transfer successfully. And that is inclusive of navigating the community college landscape, taking the right coursework in community colleges, having support with applying, enrolling, and ultimately successfully earning a baccalaureate degree in a timely manner. Jain also talks about 5 elements of establishing a transfer receptive culture that are essential. The first is making transfer an institutional priority, particularly for students who have been historically underrepresented and underserved in education. Second is providing timely outreach and resources that address the unique needs of community college students whose goal is to transfer. Third is creating engagement opportunities, particularly for those who are returning to education, to higher education after being away for a period of time. Fourth is acknowledging transfer students' lived experiences and their intersectionality between community and family. And finally is identifying and applying appropriate frameworks to assess the efficacy of the transfer process and its impact on students' belonging and success. Next slide. I think I've already used the word equity maybe 2 or 3 times in the short time that I've had the opportunity to talk with you. But I think it's critically important that we define and identify what that is. So equity is about addressing issues of disproportionate impact. And not just addressing them, but take intentional steps to eradicate disparities that lead to disproportionate impact. And we know that there are certain groups of students who are consistently disproportionately impacted, whether we're looking at the transfer process, whether we're looking at access, even from directly out of high school, whether we're looking at course success, completion, and so forth. Again, a small snapshot of those students are represented here. This is by no means an exhaustive list, and we do know that there's an incredible amount of intersectionality that exists even amongst a handful of students that are represented here. Next slide. It's also important that we don't just recognize and understand equity, but that we approach our work from an equity-minded perspective. And I would say creating a transfer receptive culture and equity mindedness are directly linked, right? Both conceptually and in terms of practice. Of course, the concept of equity mindedness comes from our colleague, Dr. Sulla Ben-Simone, who really talks about equity mindedness as being comprised of these 5 characteristics. First is, being systemically aware. So understanding that inequity is not just a problem or an issue that is challenging us in education, but inequity is a systemic issue. We see it in our workforce, we see it in our justice system, we see it in our healthcare system and other social institutions. Second is starting conversations about student success, not by asking what's wrong with students, but by starting with asking what is wrong with the institutions that are responsible for serving our students. And so when we look at the issue of transfer, we shouldn't start by asking, what is wrong with the students? Why aren't they doing what's necessary and what's important for them to be able to be eligible for transfer? It's really starting about what are the things that we're doing or not doing that's creating or not creating a transfer receptive culture that could lead to the disparities that we see in transfer. Also, not looking at students through a deficit lens or a deficit perspective. Seeing students' lived identities, specifically seeing their racial identities as assets that can be leveraged to facilitate their success. And then finally, being incredibly reflexive in who we are and the values that we bring and the practices that we bring as educators into this process. And finally, the work that Luke and I, next slide, have had the opportunity to do has enabled us to identify 5 equity-minded practices that are absolutely critical in the transfer process, and again, are aligned with creating a transfer receptive culture. The first is making sure that we're intrusive. We're not sitting back and waiting for students to invite us to help them in a system, but we're taking a proactive approach to doing so. Second is making sure we're establishing relationships with students that are grounded in trust, mutual respect, and authentic care. Next is making sure that we are creating and providing a experience for students that is both culturally relevant and affirming, and that's happening, needs to happen from a curricular perspective and what's happening inside the classroom, but also within the context of student services. Fifth is that we're community focused, recognizing that and I would say that the COVID-19 pandemic has really had a devastating effect on the community that students were able to establish by attending classes, by having their study groups, being able to participate in student organizations and so forth. And so we have to recognize that it's not about individual students, but that we really have to see ourselves as assisting and working with a community of students who come from a particular community and whose connections to those communities play a key role in the goals that they pursue. And then finally, being race conscious, recognizing that we are currently we've always lived in a racially salient society, but things are particularly racially salient now when we look at, many of the events that took place in this past year and continue to take place. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over. I believe I'm passing the baton back to Luke, who's going to let us know what we have going next. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, for providing that important context in terms of how we're trying to think about this work. If you go to the next slide, I want to just provide some framing. And one of the pieces of framing that I think is important is the work that's coming out of the Campaign for College Opportunity. In addition to being here at San Diego State, I had the privilege and honor of serving on their advisory board. And the campaign has done a number of different reports that have focused on issues of access and equity for a whole host of different populations. But there's two reports that I want to particularly highlight today. And the first one was one that came out a few years ago called The State of Education for Black Californians, which came out in 2019. And then the campaign, we just recently released a new report, which is a follow-up to the original report, which looks at how has some of those trends and patterns changed over time. So let's go back to the original report. And on the next slide, one of the things that you'll see was a finding that shocked me personally as an equity-minded educator to the core. And what they found in their original report is that when we're looking at transfer students, and we're looking specifically at Black transfer students, and this is just an example among other examples, but when we're looking at our Black transfer students, they found that 15% of them were transferring to for-profit institutions. So they would go to our community colleges, they would participate, they would do all the hard work, and then they would transfer to a for-profit institution, which from our perspective, oftentimes may not provide them with the same type of educational experiences that they need in order to be successful in a marketplace that oftentimes isn't as supportive to many of our students who come from minoritized communities. And recently there was the new report came out. And when I saw this, I had to say, again, it shook me to the core as an educator, as someone who advocates for equity and mindedness, to think that many students, that percentage of our students, we're seeing that as a primary pathway. But when we look at the new report on the next slide, what you will see is this, is that rate has not only went from 15%, but up to 38% of our Black transfer students are transferring to for-profit institutions, a trend that has increased exponentially in a very short period of time. And I'll later on, after I transitioned over to the next speaker, I'll make sure to put a link to the report in there so that you can see what we're seeing. But this, for us, we believe has to serve as a clarion call for every college and university in our state, that we have to do better. We have to focus on providing more access to all of our students, but of course, with a particular focus on our students who are racially minoritized in education. And so with that in mind, one of the things that we've thought of are, how can we have a strategy at SDSU where we're being attentive to some of the emerging patterns that we're seeing, both here on our campus, and we have two campuses currently, and a forthcoming one in Mission Valley, our campus here on the Mesa, and actually the campus that you see behind me, our Imperial Valley campus. but how can we also have a strategy that goes out to our students in our community colleges and reaches them where they're at? And what we're going to do is focus on both of those. But we want to begin this, and many of you saw that there was a big announcement that was going to take place. And the announcement is this: if you go to the next slide, is this. We spent a long time looking at, it's the slide before that. We spent a long time looking at our admissions practices, and we did a wholesale reevaluation over the past couple years looking at it. And we are very proud to announce today that as part of our new admissions processes, that we will be giving special consideration moving forward to students who have participated in Umoja, Puente, CalWORKS, EOP&S, and for those in the San Diego region who participate in HUBU, Hermanos Unidos Brothers United. And what I've done on the screen, because I know some people might be saying to yourself, is that true? Are we really being that bold and moving in this direction? I've actually put the language that was passed by our University Senate so you can see it in writing. That is the language that was passed by our University Senate that's in our policy file. And so this is a testament to the hard work that you all have done in creating success for our students. We know that these programs do an outstanding job in fostering success for our students. And we've seen it even when they've come to us in terms of the success of our transfer students. They're among our best here at San Diego State. And it's a testament to the hard work that you've done in helping students to realize the importance of using resources on campus. And we know that these are students who, when they transfer to us, are going to be used to reaching out to resources on campus, using support services. And so it's a testament to the hard work of those of you who operate these programs. It's a testament to the hard work of those of you who support these programs. And it's also a testament to the students who participate in these programs. And you might be saying to yourself, oh gosh, I want to know more details. Well, just know this: more details are forthcoming, but I can give you just a snapshot of what you'll be hearing and what you'll be receiving. The first is that in terms of this process, the students would still need to complete their major prep, the 60 transferable units and the Golden 4, and meet the CSU requirements. That's all normal in terms of how we would approach this. But for students who fully participate in these programs, and full participation is something that I'll come back to here in a moment, they will be given special consideration to come to SDSU. And let me say this, to be clear, we want them here on our campus. We want students who participated in Umoja, Puente, EOPS, CalWORKS, and HUBU here at San Diego State. It'll be part of the application process. And there will also be a verification process to, again, ensure that these are students who have fully participated and fully benefited from the programs that are out there. So not only are we focused on providing excellent access, we also want to ensure that that we're committed to the success of these students when they come here as well. So on the next slide, what I'd like to do is just briefly highlight some of the many things that we're doing here at San Diego State. First, we have our strategic plan called We Rise, We Defy, Transcending Borders, Transforming Lives. And in that plan, we proudly proclaim that we are a Hispanic serving institution that resides on Kumeyaay land, that we embrace our designation as a military and veteran serving institution, and that very soon, based upon our strategic plan, we will become an ANAPISI, an Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander institution. And that those designations aren't just buzzwords for our campus, but are truly being embraced by our students, by our faculty, by our staff, and by our campus administration. We also have a new program called our Building on Inclusive Excellence program. Well, actually, it's not a new program, but this revision to it is new. And what it means is that moving forward, and it's already begun, every new faculty member hired by San Diego State has to meet criteria that shows that they have a demonstrated record of success in either research, teaching, and or service focused on our minoritized populations, which are defined by us as our African American population, our Latinx population, our Native American population, our students with disabilities, and women in STEM, among other groups. And that is part of the process in which we vet our candidates to become part of our faculty here at San Diego State. We also want you to know that we are doing our best to be responsive to the issues that we've seen in terms of the racial unrest in our country. If after the unfortunate murder of George Floyd, one of the things that we did as a campus is our university senate, within 10 days of this idea happening, to at the time that it was passed through our senate, moved to create a race relations and policing policy, where now if a student is coming into criminal justice and they're going to graduate from our campus in criminal justice, they have to have coursework in Black Lives in Policing as part of this race relations requirement in order for them to graduate from our institution. It's now a graduation requirement. We also on Juneteenth released our 10-point plan, which includes cluster hiring focused on our African American identified faculty and staff, and not specifically that they are African American, but that they have a demonstrated record of success in research, teaching, or service focused on African American and Black populations, among other factors. We also have extensive professional learning that we're doing with our faculty. We know that to be better, we have to build our capacity to ensure that our faculty are ready to engage diverse students, to ready engage conversations on inclusion and on equity. And we have training programs that we're doing with our faculty and our staff on implicit bias, understanding what it means to be a Hispanic serving institution, understanding what it means for us to reside on Kumeyaay land. And we're also engaged in identity-specific career development programming. We have a new program that we launched called KEEP, which is providing career development specific, identity specific programming to our African American population. And we're looking forward to doing something very similar in this forthcoming year focused on our Latinx population. If you go to the next slide, you can see that in addition to all this, we have numerous cultural centers. We have 9 cultural centers that serve our population. And unlike most cultural centers where you see that it's one person in a small room, this is different. Each one of these centers has a director, an assistant director, a coordinator, an embedded counselor part-time, an embedded faculty member, a faculty scholar part-time, who are working with our students. In addition to that, they all have at least $100,000 budget that is helping them to do operational programming. That includes our Black Resource Center, our Native Resource Center, our Pride Center for our LGBTIQ+ population, our Women's Resource Center, our Center for Transformative Justice that's focusing on students who've been justice involved, our Center for Intercultural Relations, our Asian Pacific Islander Desi American Resource Center, our Latinx Resource Center, and our Undocumented Resource Center. And one of the things that we'll be doing is we already, through our centers and through our SDSU Connect program, do intrusive practices. So Frank talked about those practices in terms of what is important to do. We have taken that framework and used it to try to build our programs and services around that. So you can know this is that for students who are coming in to SDSU through this special arrangement with these specific programs, that they will have intrusive support in that weekly reach outs to them. So not only will they have an opportunity to participate in Transfer Bridge, not only will they have the opportunity to participate in transfer orientation, or even in our new FYE experience for transfer students, they will have intrusive support where each week we will reach out to them via a phone call, an email, a text message to identify problems and challenges as they're occurring, refer them to support services, do intentional intrusive follow-up. We are trying to create a net of support that is so tight that none of the students who come to our institution can fall through it. And not only that, but we hope that this important announcement serves as a message to those who are in those programs that the work that you're doing is important, but also as a message to our colleagues and other universities across our state that they should follow suit and do the same. The next slide. I'd also like to then begin this conversation that we're also going to have on microsites. We have a strategy for addressing access issues that involves bringing students to us, and that was with a conversation that we just had, as well as going to our community colleges where we know many of our students are already positioned. So it's a to us and a to you strategy through microsites. And what a microsite is an SDSU program that's housed at our community colleges. And you're actually going to hear from a representative from San Diego Mesa College who's going to talk about it. These programs are at a reasonable cost, within a range of total, in terms of the total cost, of about $1,000 to possibly $1,500 more than our on-campus experience, but that's in total. Plus, what you're going to see is that they get intensive, intrusive support. And I'll just say one piece, not to steal the thunder from my colleagues who are going to co-present, but if on our general campus currently right now, and we're doing some changes to our advising, so this is going to change, but right now there's a 1 to 900 advising ratio. And again, we're in the process of hiring 20 more advisors that are going to change that. But in our microsite programs, we recognize the importance of being intrusive, so important that we're transitioning from a model that is a 1 to 90 ratio at our microsites. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Stefan Hyman, who's going to talk to you about what are some of the things that we've been trying to do around access and equity in terms of our enrollment management practices. Stefan?
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Good afternoon to those of you who are just a little bit east of us. Real pleasure to be with you today. If we could go to the next slide. What I'd like to do is talk about some of our transfer admissions pathways, talk about what I'm calling here pathways to success, and really talk about some of the ways, just building on everything that Luke and Frank were just speaking about, that we are trying to create a transfer-friendly culture that begins long before a student ever arrives on our campus, but extends to graduation and far beyond that. Next slide, please. Okay. SDSU is making a global impact. This past fall semester, we had just under 35,600 students enrolled. It was our highest enrollment since 2008. We have a network of 400,000 alumni across the world. We offer 202 degree programs, almost 100 undergraduate majors. We're ranked number 30 for Forbes Best Value list, and we're also ranked among the top 35 universities for nationwide for ethnic diversity by U.S. News and World Report. Next slide, please. Diversity is something that's part of our culture. It's something that we take immense pride in. We've received the Insight into Diversity Higher Education Excellence and Diversity Award for 5 consecutive years, and this is for outstanding commitment to diversity and inclusion. Next slide, please. We're expanding access. You're going to hear about how we're doing that with the following speakers with regard to our new microsites and virtual programs. But many of you probably are aware that we are building a new campus. We're building a new campus in Mission Valley, and we're going to have a phased opening that is going to begin in 2022. And ultimately, over time, we expect that campus to be housing upwards of 15,000 additional students. Next slide, please. Something just very recent that I want to put out there, and really I think complements much of what Luke was just speaking about. We were just one of 10 universities across the country given an inaugural Virtual Innovation Award for excellence delivering virtual student support services during the period of COVID-19. This award came from NASPA, well-known higher education organization, and included funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. We really couldn't be prouder to be associated with such esteemed colleagues and to be receiving this recognition. Next slide, please. Another big pride point. This past fall semester, in addition to having our highest enrollment in 12 years at the university, we also brought in nearly 4,500 new transfers, which was a record-sized class, largest transfer class we have ever brought in. Our transfers are excelling in really remarkable ways. Our graduation rate for our class of fall 2016, 89%, record high. And that is really thanks to all of the support that the students are being afforded here, certainly their grit, their perseverance, noting that so many of our transfers are facing other types of life challenges. But as well, I think all of the great training and all of the great support that you're providing them at the community college level and through a variety of different CBOs. We offer several different types of transfer gate pathway programs. Our Associate Degree for Transfer ADT program is a very common way for students to earn an associate's degree and then transfer right in for a 2+2 structure. We have a local transfer admissions guarantee program, and then our general transfer pathway program. And we have many transfers who are coming in with 60 credits earned who haven't quite made that reached that associate degree point yet, but who are able to really fulfill their goals at SDSU. Next slide, please. So what do we look for in a transfer applicant? In general, 60 transferable semester units, student who's roughly halfway to the finish line, students who have already completed general education and Golden 4 courses. Golden 4 are a series of 4 core area subject areas in California. Major preparation. We look at students who, again, are about half of the way there by completing the pre-major courses that students who on our SDSU campus would generally be taking within reason. We understand that not every community college is going to offer the exact same courses, and then a strong grade point average. And again, as Dr. Wood mentioned, we will be giving special consideration beginning in fall 2022 to local students and those involved in the college preparatory programs at their community colleges that are listed here. More details on the application process will be coming out in the early summer. We will reach back out to this whole group, make sure that you're all aware on the exact steps where a student would flag their involvement in this, how the verification process will work. So those details will follow. Next slide, please. And really to close my section of this presentation, I just wanted to give a handful of links here. Our email, admissions@sdsu.edu, website, which really goes into greater depth for pre-major requirements and broader descriptions of ADT and local transfer guarantee, is admissions.sdsu.edu/transfers. We're offering a plethora of virtual visit opportunities for students every single day. Every single day we have admissions advisors who are eager to speak with you and speak with your students. We also have a great program, weekly Ask an Aztec, which would be our current students who are answering questions that just have to come from a student's perspective. And we have a great virtual tour. We can't wait to get your students back on campus for physical tours, but for the time being, the next best thing I think is our virtual tour. Very much looking forward to staying connected with all of you, and thank you again for being here today. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to our Dean of Global Campus, Radhika, please.
Thank you, Stefan. Hello, everyone. I know you've had a lot of impressive and amazing facts, information, passion, and I get to talk about our opportunities for college completion from the Global Campus perspective. So I just want to start off by saying we are a unit of the CSU under Professional and Continuing Education, and we're intentionally designed to serve non-traditional, lifelong, returning learners and professional learners. And when I got here 2.5 years ago, the privilege of working with Dr. Wood to define a modified version of programs that we already offer on the online side. So I want to start by introducing Global Campus. Next slide, please. So SDSU Global Campus is our means by which the academic experience is extended to all learners outside of the in-person classes. Now, as Dr. Harris mentioned, every student has the experience of learning online in the last year, right? However, at Global Campus, we are very intentional about what we do in the sense that we wrap services that are designed to support the whole learner, their strengths, their challenges, their insecurities, physical and mental challenges and roadblocks that we may not even know they have, that we will discover together as they navigate this academic journey. So to this end, our courses are very intentionally designed to support these learners. These students have full or part-time jobs, they're balancing many things, and education is often the one thing that drops off the list should it all become too many things to juggle, as we all know has been this last year for many of us. So what we are looking to build with this program is build upon the familiar and the known, so that the communities that you all, and in all the colleges that we see around the country, in the communities that they serve, that they have already built will continue to be the foundation upon which these additional services that we're wrapping around will actually rest. And this scaffolding approach is provided through in-person advising and co-located services. So that with these shared spaces and available services will be a continuous reality for these students who are already, our students who are already studying and graduating with associate's degrees. So next slide, please. So how will this work? So basically it is like all things that are new, detailed planning and coordination and communication with our microsite partner. We launched with 2 partners this last fall. It was San Diego Mesa College and Southwestern College. And most recently we have San Diego City College. And we're in the process of expanding to other colleges that are in our immediate service area, working with them to figure out what we can do and how. But here's the interesting idea that we discovered together. It's a pilot. And we are building on it in terms of how these services are provided. Of course, there's the pandemic. So things that were on site are tethered to the site, but virtually. So how do we do this? We offer access to campus services, advising and coaching. We also provide as Dr. Wood mentioned, a 90-to-1 ratio. So think of it like this. Why 90-to-1? If an advisor has about 90 students, you can imagine that they would have at least 15 minutes to half an hour to just touch base and say, I'm here, what's going on? How can we help you? So it is really going to you versus the student reaching out to saying, I need help. Because oftentimes by the time they do, there's so much mounting on their plate that it's difficult to recover lost ground. Next slide, please. So think about the outreach and nurturing that starts with when we identify a student that as being qualified, available, interested in continuing this program. We work very closely with the transfer advising team and with the college in general to identify timeframes, types of students that will be ready, what their individual plans are, so that we can provide them with detailed advising even before they get to the point where they are going to be ready to apply. And when they do, the contact model and the approach and the advising model is again a continuous cycle. We have advisors who are offering this counseling and this training for students. There's a train the trainer model there. And when students reach out to us, we have dedicated advising that's specific to that college's students and the needs of those students as we learn from those advisors. The next slide, please. So one part of this that we discovered, as I'm sure our microsite partner here is going to talk about from our end, is how to be detailed about thinking about this strategy. As in, marketing is a word, right? How do you actually intentionally provide the collateral, the content, incorporate the college's vision for this program along with ours, design content that is specifically designed for these programs and these partner institutions. And for some colleges, if they are able to, we also have a FERPA compliant approach for direct outreach. So that is entirely an option. But what we're really thinking about is how do we ensure that the student is affiliated from a services perspective to that college, but from an academic perspective to SDSU. Keeping in mind, all the services are still provided by SDSU employees, but the shared spaces, the site, when we're all back in person, the technology spaces, the space for advising, the access to the services in the college, those are all site oriented. So, and college partner oriented. So we design and we discuss all that. We write an MOU. Next slide, please. Oh, wait, then maybe not. I'll talk about the MOU at the very end, but I'll leave you with this, that we actually document every aspect of that before we launch the program so that we have a very clear understanding of who's doing what. I want to give a nod to our Southwestern College partner who's been phenomenal in working with us. For today's presentation, I have to introduce a fabulous overall person, partner, champion, and microsite representative in Dr. Ashanti Hans. She's the Vice President of Student Services, the previous slide. And she's going to talk to us about her experience in working with us for the last several months. Dr. Hans?
Thanks so much. I'm very excited to be here to share with you our experience. But before I want to do that, I just want to shout out SDSU for the big announcement regarding special consideration for transfer admission for students and programs that are near and dear to our work as community college practitioners. I think that we feel heard, we feel seen, and we thank you for responding and serving our students with such great intentionality, equity, and value for who our students are and what they bring, and for honoring the faculty and staff that so passionately and with excellence support students in these programs. So thanks to you for all that you are doing. We appreciate that. So again, I have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about my perspective about the San Diego State University and San Diego Community College District Bachelor's Degree Completion Microsite Partnership at Mesa College. So 2 years ago, Chancellor Carroll, President De La Torre, and President Luster had the foresight to enter into this first ever partnership in the state of California, a partnership designed to increase educational opportunities for the students of today and professionals of tomorrow. So we launched our partnership with a BS in Business Administration, and this year expanded our offering to a BA in Communication. And while we, along with Southwestern College, were excited to be the first, we are grateful that this will not be the last, as such partnerships are critical to the success of our students. And I do want to give a shout out to City College and Palomar for also launching these partnerships. Access to these high demand degree programs remove barriers and eliminate actual denial of opportunities for our students. Our partnership is inherently valuable to our mission of contemporary lifelong learners, our goals of establishing innovative and meaningful pathways and partnerships, and of living our vision at Mesa College of becoming the leading college of equity and excellence. We seek partnerships that allow us to serve non-traditional and often disproportionately impacted students. So partnerships that are intentional about equitable access and outcomes, that provide support and flexibility regarding paths to success, in particular for adult learners with multiple responsibilities. So the fact that this partnership gives our students access to online, evening and weekend courses that honor their schedules, responsibilities, and commitments, and wraps them with support from both Mesa and SDSU are connections that we live for. We work closely with the Global Campus to target outreach towards Mesa College students who could benefit from this opportunity. So targeted outreach for us includes recent ADT, ASAA graduates in program disciplines, students with 30 transferable units, and say 2 identified business major prep classes or 3 communication classes. So we build these lists and follow an agreed upon timeline for emailing students, communicating with them so that they can prepare and begin to imagine the possibilities. We work very closely to create unique and specific opportunities to promote the program. We create space for inquiry and provide workshops that inform and guide. So we talk about look and feel of our social media, online and print campaigns. SDSU creates the material, and we used an established timeline to get the word out. At Mesa College, we answer questions about preparedness, admissions, ADTs, courses, major prep, GE, GPA, the application process, timing, and more. And once students are in the program and when we return to campus, we'll provide space for instructional support, supplemental programming, access to services that meet the unique needs of our transfer students. So they will have access to basic needs, to parking, to the library, et cetera. This program addresses some of the challenges related to the experiences faced by transfer and transferring. We drastically reduce the shock of transferring and adjusting to a new college. The wraparound support from 2 campuses builds in structures that support persistence and attainment. Our early work with students address acceptance and articulation issues, and the entire process is designed to honor work life and school balance. So in a recent conversation with our Transfer Center coordinator, Ann Hetkin, who is incredible, I asked her what makes this partnership so special. She paused And it was a long pause. I almost thought that her screen froze, but then she shared that talking about this gives her goosebumps. I was like, ooh, why? And she shared because this partnership opens doors and that it is changing lives that will change lives. I got goosebumps too. As we talk, there was a theme of students realizing a dream that seemed would be forever deferred, not because they weren't prepared or capable of worthy, but because majors are impacted, seats aren't available, life circumstances won't allow them to pack up and study in another part of the state or the country. Because attending in person, part-time or full-time, is not always possible, and attending completely online without these built-in supports and familiarity does not provide a strong enough foundation for some to stand on. But now, as a result of our innovative efforts, they are either there at UCSD or becoming an SDSU student. Aztecs pursuing their dream of earning a degree from a prestigious university that for many have been a backdrop of their lives here in San Diego. They are taking active steps towards social mobility, earning more, learning more, contributing more, right in their own backyard. We spoke of one student in particular who attended Mesa College over a decade ago and struggled. The student, now older and wiser, is back at Mesa with a 3.5, finishing up his AA. The student works for the government and was going to need a bachelor's to continue his work. Pursuing his bachelor's with a full-time job was possible, but did not seem likely with his level of commitment and responsibilities. So you can only imagine how excited our coordinator was to tell this student about this unique opportunity and partnership, this fully online, flexible, affordable program taught by award-winning SDSU faculty with access to resources and support from Mesa College and SDSU. He will be attending SDSU in the fall. His life is in the process of being changed. I have 2 degrees from SDSU. So the thought that our transfer students can have access to the same quality education that has played a pivotal role in developing me into the person that I am, much like our transfer center coordinator said, it gives me goosebumps. When I started my academic career at SDSU in the mid to early 90s, I could not even have imagined the depth and breadth of knowledge and wisdom I would acquire and share, the doors that would open or opportunities I would take advantage of that would allow me to live my purpose of creating conditions that matter for students to succeed. The thought of our students having that same foundation that can lead to their unimaginables makes every single moment invested in this partnership worth it. So of course, we are learning and evolving as we grow. As we often find when working with people outside of our institution, language matters. So when reviewing and renewing our MOUs, we really had to work through the details to make sure that what was written used language that honored both institutions. We learned that our institutions have different rhythms and had to spend time understanding when, how, and how often we should communicate with our students. And we are working to align deadlines. Some of our processes, like access to student records or information, were different and had to be adjusted and reimagined. The key thing to know is that we are working through everything that pops up and actively resolving matters as they arise. This year, we made a concerted effort to bring both teams together to meet regularly and to discuss plans. They have an amazing representative, Jacqueline, who's created a share drive that houses all of our marketing, brochures, email campaigns, flyers, social media content, and timelines, which has really made this outreach and recruitment cycle a delight. We are dreaming together and really working to create an excellent model for how this partnership can be replicated throughout the state. So we have something that we call equity sightings at Mesa College, and sharing these sightings serve as our proof is in the pudding moments, right? Tangible ways of seeking and seeing equity in action. So one of our microsite equity sightings is the data that we recently released. And the data of our first semester, first class. And so you see the data on the screen, some of the highlights. It's a small sample, about 45 students, but my goodness, right? It looks great. So in general, minoritized student populations increase from being in person, taking in-person classes at San Diego State, to being fully enrolled in online classes at San Diego State, to microsite participation. That's equity. So in addition to ethnic representation, we see that 75% of our students are between the ages of 23 to 39. That's equity. We love seeing that our male participation in the microsite program is trending up. That's equity. And finally, the majority of our students are within 100 miles of San Diego State. That's regional equity. So I'm sincerely grateful that we are working collaboratively and intentionally to create new equitable learning opportunities for today's adult learners. Trust me, you want to be a part of this. And so I know there's going to be additional information that we'll share what that will look like. And I encourage you to follow up, to ask questions, because this is an immediate now thing that we can all do to create meaningful pathways for our students to succeed. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to share. I'll turn it back over.
Next slide, please. I think you can all see what a fantastic partner we have in Dr. Hans and in Mesa College. We're very, very lucky and very grateful that she's here and she took the time to explain more fully what we're doing. I want to just say that this is something that speaks to the heart of all of us who want the ultimate form of equity being reaching all lives equally with the kind of needs that each person has, allowing them to become transformed into a fuller person, as Dr. Hans put it, to change more lives. We have a comprehensive MOU process, so that allows us to discover the motivations and the interests, the program areas, and the way in which we work together. And as you heard, it's work in progress. If you'd like to learn more about our program, you can find more information in the link that's on there. And of course, we're always happy to hear from you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak with you about this amazing program. It's a joy. And with that, I'm turning it over to our fearless Chief Diversity Officer and Vice President, Dr. Wood.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to conclude this short webinar with a few comments. First is that when, we're obviously proud to be announcing both of these efforts. Again, the special admissions consideration for those who are part of Umoja, Puente, CalWORKs, EOPS, and HUBU. And that is a statewide effort that we have. So no matter where you are in the state, that we want your transfer students to come to SDSU and to see SDSU as a place to go. And we also hope that this will encourage other institutions to do the same and to follow suit. I'd also like to just say that there was questions about whether these students who are in our microsite programs would be available to have scholarships. And if they fill out a general financial aid application, then yes, to answer that question, they are. We don't, and in terms of the microsites, obviously they're housed right now currently in San Diego County. But if you're interested in having one, we know that we have people from across the country here. So no matter where you're at, we hope that you'll fill out the form and we can have a conversation. And the last thing that I want to do is just conclude by thanking our president, President Adela de la Torre, who has served as a visionary in helping us to get to this point where we could truly embrace transfer equity as not just a slogan, not just something that sounds good, but with some tangible actions that help to follow it up. We look forward to connecting with you throughout the coming days and coming months as we release more information on how this will play out and how we will go through the verification process in terms of students who've, again, fully participated in these programs. But just wanted to conclude by saying thank you for your commitment to all of our students, but specifically our transfer students. Have a good rest of your day,